podcast series on entrepreneurial universities, and I'm so excited to have two very special guests here today. First, I will take the floor and just say who I am. I'm Sarah Steinberg, and I'm a senior advisor on the advisory board of myFootpath, which is a company that's dedicated to re-engaging and re-enrolling the almost 50 million students that are out there across the country that have credits but don't have degrees. So that's the real focus of myFootpath. Personally, I've spent actually more than 30 years in higher education, and the mission and vision of myFootpath is very close to my heart in terms of the work that they're doing to bring students back to finish and to set up recruiting and support mechanisms for students. Today, I am so excited to be joined by two members of the University of Denver, which falls most definitely under our category of entrepreneurial universities. And I think as you're watching this conversation and listening to the conversation, you will have a strong sense that the programs that are happening at the University of Denver for first generation students and for lots of other student groups on campus is very innovative and very focused on this exact question of how to retain and send students for degree completion and help them achieve their goals. So I think I'm looking forward to a really interesting conversation. I'd like to begin by asking Chancellor Haefner and Dr. White to introduce themselves and just explain a little bit about yourself and your connection to the university. Then I will turn back again to the Chancellor to give an overview and kind of the context of the whole university before we drill down a little bit deeper into the topics of retaining first generation students and other students that you serve at the University of Denver. So Chancellor, would you like to go first?
I would be happy to. And first of all, Sarah, thank you for hosting this podcast. Thank you to myFootpath for their mission and what they're trying to do. It's a noble cause, and it's an important one that we have in our country, especially as one thinks about all the technology changes that are happening and how we can help the older adult populations in particular retrain and remain productive and have a sense of fulfillment from their work on this. So it's a noble mission you all have, and we're just so pleased to be a part of it. I am Jeremy Haefner. I'm Chancellor here at the University of Denver. Chancellor is the same thing as a president in higher education. And so it's my responsibility, really, of all things that it affects or touches the University of Denver. So particularly our students. We are a student-centered university. And so it is really important that the Chancellor maintain that as core to the mission of DU, as we like to call ourselves. It's a university of about 13,000 students, 6,000 graduate students, 5,000 plus undergraduates, a little bit more than each of those to get up to 13,000. We have very strong professional schools in law, social work, education, psychology, business, of course, and then a very strong core group of colleges and programs in engineering, science, the liberal arts, social sciences, international studies in particular. We have as one of our core strengths our study abroad program. We're a top 5 university of sending kids off to have that transformational experience. and we're quite proud of what we do there. And then we're what's called an R1 research university. We're the only private university in the Rocky Mountain region to have achieved that Carnegie class distinction. Puts us in a rare group of other universities of about 143. And you all know who they all are. But it means that we take research and scholarship and creative work very, very seriously and make sure that it has an impact on the lives of all of us. So that's a quick synopsis of the University of Denver, but I want to turn over to my colleague, Dr. Tamara White, who is really the star of the show, talking about so many of the wonderful, innovative programs we have here at DU.
And
Thank you.
before you, if you could hold 1 second before you do that, I wanted to do a little advertisement because you also have a university college that focuses on adult students, and we're going to have a part 2 of this discussion where we talk more specifically about how you serve those adult students. And I just wanted to ask if you could say just a few words about that work as well.
Absolutely. Our university college is one of our 11 colleges at the University of Denver, and it serves the adult population. It has a bachelor completion program. It works with guild enterprises, so the business to business kind of work to help provide education to employees. So it's one of the most entrepreneurial units in our entrepreneurial university, and I'm sure part 2 will be very interesting to your audience.
That's great. And Tamara, I'm so apologetic for interrupting you because you are the star of this podcast. And please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Dr. Tamara White. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently the Associate Dean of Students here at the University of Denver. I've been here for 2 years. I work with student inclusion and belonging as part of the Dean of Students office. And what that means is I work with our Cultural Center, which supports our BIPOC students, our students of color, as well as our LGBTQ plus students. And I also work with First at DU, which is a program that supports our first generation students. And we have a couple cohort programs in that. Also first gen, I went to the University of Denver for my undergraduate degree. I also got my doctorate here. And then the last piece is my daughter is a second year student here as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I want to draw a line specifically under First at DU because when I was looking through the materials about the university and the work that you're doing with first gen students, that program really jumped out for me. And I thought that it would be a great starting point for the conversation if you would talk a little bit about First at DU. Perhaps starting just with an explanation of what the program is, but then maybe the second part of the question would be what prompted you to go in the direction of creating the program?
Sure, happy to start. First at DU is a relatively new program here at DU. We were Center for Multicultural Excellence and then Access and Transitions. And one of our programs in Access and Transitions was One Gen U. And that student was speaking with someone about how good the program is, how good being part of a cohort is. And that person actually turned out to be a funder. And they gave us a very, very generous grant to be able to focus on first generation students. So now First at DU focuses on, we have a couple main points. One is we have cohort programs. So these are programs that have an assigned mentor, they have pre-orientation, we do different programming for them. Also, we support all first generation students here at DU. Right now, we're focusing mostly on undergraduate students, and right now we have a little over 1,000 undergrad first generation students. And then the program is also focusing on family and parent engagement. So if I had to describe first at DU, I would say it is programming that is based on what first generation students need to really help demystify what this college experience is. We provide them with staff support, with peer leader support, and then programming to really help them be successful here at DU.
One of the aspects that you just mentioned was the cohort sort of perspective. And I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit more and how the cohorts work. Is it an academic cohort, a co-curricular cohort, a little bit of both? How exactly does that work?
Sure. I think the cohort programming is really our sweet spot. Like that is one of the reasons that we have had so much success with retention and persistence. And our cohort programs, again, I have cohorts in the Cultural Center, which is part of the work that I do, as well as at First at DU. And then we have a couple other cohort programs that were affiliated with us when we were Access and Transitions. So what I'll talk about with the cohorts is it starts with being assigned a peer leader. And then we have a pre-orientation or a summer bridge program where we bring students back before orientation begins for most of the other students. All the students live on the same floor, which I think is also impacting the success that we have. And then we do programming, and we really do programming when they need it. So like pre-orientation, before they get here, we talk to them about what should you expect, what is DU going to be like for you as a first-gen student, and how can we provide support networks for you before you begin. And then we talk to them about, giving back to the community. So you should be a peer leader your next year. Have you thought about study abroad? What about internships? And what I really like about First at DU is the staff have really thought about the lifespan of a student, and they really think about, okay, the first year we need to make sure we give this programming. Academic support, do you know how to study? Second year, we're talking about leadership because a lot of our students are now in leadership positions. Third year, a lot of our students are abroad. And then the fourth year, we're asking them to give back and help us to make the program even better. So if I had to describe our cohort programs, I would say it is peer leaders, it is a pre-orientation program, and then it is specific programming to support students where they're at.
So another question that I have, which may be directed actually to the Chancellor, is I know in my previous position when I was a provost, I always had to explain what a provost was. And I noticed when you introduced yourself, you had to explain what a chancellor was. And so what linkages do you have in the sort of office of the chancellor to the programs that, are described as part of First at DU?
Yeah, so first of all, and I want to talk about the broader kind of educational paradigm that the University of Denver is embracing, because First at DU is a poster child for it in many ways. It's talking about the whole development of the student. Well, but to get to your point, right? I think there's no other person that at the university that is looking at the entire university and its success. It's delivering on a promise that we have to our students and to our other stakeholders that are out there, and that's the chancellor position. We do work very carefully with the provost, which is the chief academic officer, of course, of the university, and especially is important that the provost works with programs like Dr. White has, because ultimately the success of our student means they graduate and they end up with a great degree from the University of Denver. So that academic success is really front and center to everything we do at the University of Denver. But the educational paradigm is something I think is important, especially in the context of entrepreneurial universities. The University of Denver has always looked upon itself as an institution that cares deeply for the development of the whole student. and actively pursues that. And for years, it relied heavily on experiential learning as the anchors to that commitment of developing the whole student. Study abroad, internships in the city of Denver, undergraduate research opportunities, for example, with our faculty. These are kind of signature experiences that our students have, but there's many other experiences that. What we began about 5 years ago was a journey to be very intentional with that commitment to teach to the whole student. So we developed our paradigm called the four-dimensional experience. Four dimensions: intellectual journey, careers and jobs and lives of purpose, well-being, and character development. And we feel that there's really experiences, there's mentors, and there's reflection. And reflection plays a really critical role because it is only through reflection that you really learn and take away from experiences. So students have experiences in the classroom, they have experiences outside the classroom. And as an example of first at DU, we assign them a constellation of mentors, faculty mentors, peer mentors. I want to talk about that in just a minute. Staff advisors, wellness coaches, career advisors as well. And they are all there to help guide, support the student, but especially to help them reflect on their experiences in the classroom, out of the classroom, as it pertains to those four different dimensions. So study abroad. You go off and you come back. Well, what did you learn about how your immersion taught you about character from a different cultural perspective, right? What values did you pick up immediately when you were in Asia that you may not have been exposed to here in the United States? How did you handle your wellness while you were over there, right? Those are kind of reflective questions that help students start to put and make connections between their experiences that they then take away. So this four-dimensional experience is really now at the heart of all of what we do at the University of Denver, and the First Gen program is a great example of that. But what makes it really unique and entrepreneurial is how we're using this in conjunction with our two-campus approach. So we have a beautiful urban campus in the middle of the city of Denver. It is, of course, where students have their classes and their academic experience, their intellectual journey. And it's also, because it's sitting in Denver, it's where they explore their careers and jobs through internships and eventually placement. But we also have an incredible mountain campus, which we call the Kennedy Mountain Campus, named after James C. Kennedy, who was a generous alum and donor for us. It's 730 acres in Northwest Colorado, and it provides an immense amount of opportunities for students to be in the outdoors, focus on their well-being, and also explore character because there's all kinds of different challenges. So the combination of the four-dimensional experience with this two-campus approach is really quite unique to the University of Denver. It's integrated, and it fits together. And I think our students are the beneficiaries of that. So that's just a big example of the entrepreneurial innovation kind of history of the University of Denver. It goes way back to our founding in many respects. And we have been a highly adaptive, agile university, adapting to different changes over time. And so it's just an incredible university that I think does embody this entrepreneurial spirit.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, thank you for going in that broader context. And what an amazing resource to have those two campuses, especially with one and in the background of Tamara's screen, you can see, I guess, the view of the Rockies and whatever else is out there. I'm in Maryland, so I don't have these beautiful views that you do, but no, it sounds extraordinary. And so going back again to you, Tamara, and talking about the programs, you are also looking at other sort of segments of your student population and other things that caught my eye that I'm sure fit into this four-dimensional experience that Chancellor Haefner was describing to us are things like equity in STEM, the programs that you have, or a cohort for Black women students. Just, two examples that I picked out from your literature. Can you talk a little bit about that, expanding to the other population groups in addition to the first gen, and how they take advantage of the different support services that you were talking about and the broader context of the university?
Absolutely. Um, so I do work with the Cultural Center, and the Cultural Center has a cohort program. It's called Excelling Leaders Institute. It's been around for 17 years here at DU, and it is fashioned very similar to the way that First at DU is: assigned mentors, pre-orientation, and then programming throughout the year. We also have Equity in STEM is the eSTEM program that you're speaking about, and that was part of First at DU, but it has a significant academic component. So the students, they come in for summer bridge, they've got peer leaders, but they also take a class together throughout the whole first year. And so because it has such a strong academic component, we actually moved it over to academic affairs so that it is now with other programs very similar. Don't get me wrong, we would love to have an academic component to First at DU, but right now we're focusing on really foundational growing of the program. But I'll also speak to the Cultural Center having what you referred to, Black Women Cohort. What it is it's called SISTA Network, and it is for Black women graduate students. And actually, when I was a student here, I accessed this resource, and it is to provide space and support, sense of belonging and community for Black women graduate students. They actually had an event last week, and they had a great turnout. But most importantly, the women talked about how great the space was for them in terms of feeling like they have a place where they can land, where they belong, as they continue to do their studies. The Cultural Center also has a mentoring program for our LGBTQ plus students. It's new this year, and it's not assigned mentors, but the opportunity to have a mentor who has a similar experience to you. So what I can say about the programs that we have is we do have cohort programs. We've got Volunteers in Partnership. We've got Davis, New Mexico Scholars, and they are fashioned very similar to the First at DU cohort. But we also provide support for other communities in different ways through the Cultural Center, First at DU, and then Academic Affairs or Student Success.
There's some interesting themes going on with all the programs that Dr. White is mentioning, and of course, the four-dimensional experience. And one of them is mentors. I think what we've discovered is that the universities are complex places. And the challenge for students to identify their career, to find a social network, to be successful in their classrooms is a daunting task for all students, but particularly for first-generation students, which just, in their families, they since they're the first one to go, they just don't have that grounding in what college and university is all about. So mentors play a huge role for us. And that means we have to take mentorship really seriously. We have to train mentors. They have to be equipped to handle all kinds of different kind of crises that a student may be facing and struggles with it, and help them find ways to navigate through that and build resilience as you do it. And we've further found that peer mentors and the first gen has those. So does the four-dimensional experience. Is one of the best ways, because students relate to students at the end of the day. They feel like that's a relationship that if it develops, it can be very trusting. People can be vulnerable. And it's really, really powerful that we've seen. So mentorship plays a big role at the University of Denver.
Yeah, I've seen that in my own personal experience with peer mentoring programs that were set up at the universities that I was involved in, but also just in general, it's what I would agree 100% is one of the best practices in this space. One of the follow-up questions that I had actually, again for you, Tamara, is what training how do you know, you don't have to go into all the details because I'm sure that that will be our another discussion that we'll have. But just in general, what kind of training do you have for the peer mentors?
We've got a variety of things that we do to make sure the students are ready to engage with their students. Before they leave for the summer, we do a full day and a half of training with them, making sure they know what resources are on campus, making sure they know how to get to know someone, have a conversation with someone, how to ask probing questions, how to listen. What we're really looking forward to, well, let me finish that first. Then over the summer, we do a couple of virtual training sessions with them. And then we virtually have them connect with their mentees so that over the summer, they have an opportunity to talk and connect. And I will say that my daughter is a mentor this year. And over the summer, she got such a kick out of her mentees emailing her and texting her to ask her questions. And it was just really great to see, right? Is that full circle of she did it and then now she's helping students. So I think that it really does provide a community and a foundation of support, that constellation of support for students. But we're talking with new student and family programs who leads our 4D peer leader program about how can we come together on training so that all of our peer leaders are having a similar training experience and then helping students with a similar understanding with resources and support.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Switching gears a little bit, I noticed also that you have a lot of programs that reach down into the K-12 space, into middle school. As an example, I know that you have programs at that level. Are those things that fall under your area of expertise, or and if so, anything you want to add about that? I
Yes,
thought that
thank
was
you.
really
That
interesting.
is part of First at DU. We have a college access part, and it was more inherited. Volunteers in Partnership is a program that started in 1990 here at DU. Actually started by the then Chancellor, and it is really the model for how our other cohort programs were developed because we know that it works. But our Volunteers in Partnership does go back to the high schools. We have a program where we go back to the middle schools and we begin to talk to students about going to college. What's so great about this program is it's people who graduated from those middle schools or those high schools. So it's like they're going home, they're in their community. And then Volunteers in Partnership also has a pre-orientation, they have assigned mentors, but the really great part of it is they go back to their communities to give back and encourage them to come to college. And I know on the questions that you sent earlier, we talked about the college going attitude and how young folks are when they start to think about will they go to college. And this program has really helped students to think about, yeah, we can go to college, we can even go to DU. And what we've seen is like the older sibling will come to DU and then the younger siblings will come too. So we've seen families come through DU because of the relationships and the support and the community that have been built through these programs.
What I like about that is that, again, it's the student to student aspect that, by sending our own students in back to the high schools, the middle schools, the students that are in those schools then see, wow, here's another student. She was just here and she's now successful at a university and a DU. I can do that, right?
Yes.
I think that's very powerful.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. I was talking to somebody recently, actually more than that. It's somebody who's doing their dissertation on this topic of the difference between being prepared for college and succeeding in college. It's really two different things. And you are tackling both sides of that in a really interesting way. You're, through the peer mentorship, through the programs where you're reaching down into the K-12 space, you're putting into the heads of kids the idea that, this is what you need to do to prepare to be a DU student.
Mhm.
And then, right from the get-go, you're preparing them to be successful as a DU student through all of the other programs that we've been talking about.
Yes.
And so along those lines, and it always amazes me in these conversations how quickly the time goes. So I just want to sneak in two more questions. One has to do with the success that you're seeing. Is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience here about any metrics that you've either set for yourself for outcomes, or anything else along those lines that have to do with measuring success from the programs that you're working on?
So yes, we do have metrics to show how
I
successful our
figured that you
programs are.
did.
What I can say about our cohort programs is we have tracked, for lack of a better word, how persistence has gone, how graduation looks for students who are part of our cohort programs. And I looked back at some of the statistics that we have, and for the past 3 years, our cohort persistence, so from first year to second year, has been above the average for all of our cohort programs.
Wow.
We also, because we got the generous grant for First Ed DU, we've been really looking at first generation students in particular and how are they doing with persistence, how are they doing with graduation. And what we have seen is over the past, it's been about 2 or 3 years that we've been working specifically, our graduation rate has rose all 3 years for our first generation students. So it's working. I think the other ways that we're measuring success is the community that we're building, the sense of belonging for students. A statistic that we have is 75% of students at DU study abroad, but only 25% of our first generation students at DU study abroad. Well, we are working really hard to impact that. That will be a success measure when we see more than 25% of our students who are studying abroad. Let me look at my notes to see if there are other, and then Chancellor Haefner, you want to jump into.
Absolutely. It is all, at the end of the day, it's all about outcomes. So I'm glad you're asking that question. 70% of our students end up staying in Colorado. They end up loving it in Denver and of course the broader state. So we're working very carefully to make sure that they have the jobs available and are placed well in that regard. And 92% of our students end up with a job that is relative to their major within 6 months. So it's a best in class sort of outcome that we can have. And we're really quite exceptionally proud about that as well. We're beginning to build outcomes for the four-dimensional experience, and we want to really study that longitudinally, right? Because these skills in these four dimensions, character, well-being, careers, and their intellect, really are life skills that they're learning through their experiences. And so that means they're going to have a long-term impact on their lives. So we want to measure how they perceive their experience at the University of Denver, particularly the four-dimensional experience, after 1 year out, after 5 years out, after 10 years out. So the expectation is that we will have solid evidence to indicate that this holistic approach really matters to our graduates as well.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, I have learned so much from talking to you both. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, including those who will be watching this conversation. And just to wrap up by asking you, Dr. White and Chancellor Haefner, if you just have any other things that you would like to make sure that you brag about your institution in any way that you would like. So Tamara, would you like to go first?
Sure. I feel very grateful and blessed to be able to work here at DU, to have had a great undergraduate experience and then to come back and be able to work with students who are experiencing similar things that I did as a student, has been really wonderful. So working with the Cultural Center, we really have some great supports for our students of color and our LGBTQ plus students. Didn't get to talk about the Pride Closet that we have that provides gender affirming resources for our students, but then also looking at how First at DU has grown and how it is really making an impact on the students. Again, I just am really proud to be able to work here.
Well, I'll take that opportunity as it presents itself. So I get excited because the University of Denver is truly a unique university and plays such an important role in the landscape of higher education because it is really positioned to deliver on a new promise for higher education, a promise that will develop the whole student and really produce character-driven leaders for tomorrow. It's a promise that our research is really going to be for the benefit of all of us, and it's grounded in the core principle of a university on open inquiry, free speech, and civil discourse, right? Because that's the only way that you really get at the heart of these complex issues that we face today. And I think ultimately it's a promise that will restore in some significant way the public trust that has been lost in higher education because we are delivering on our promise. And it is about graduating great leaders for our communities, for our states, for our country as well. So I am so upbeat. And the programs that Tamara talked about are exemplary of that promise. We're committed to supporting all of our students and providing them with the support and the resources that they need to be successful, graduate, and then become contributing members of our communities. So it's a noble profession that we're both in, and we're both grateful to be here.
It is indeed, and I am very thankful to you both for participating in a great conversation. And I look forward to part two, and just continuing to highlight all the great things that are going on at the University of Denver. So thanks very much. And on behalf of myFootpath, I also want to thank you very much for being part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.